Let's get you the reaction now from the party that brought the motion of no confidence against Thapelo Ahmad, which would have been heard against the mayor tomorrow. It will go ahead now against the Speaker, Colleen Makwela from COPE, who's just now been speaking. Bring in ActionSA's chairperson, Michael Beaumont. Michael, a very good evening to you. Your reaction then to the breaking news tonight, Thapelo Ahmad, mayor no longer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was a thing that was definitely coming from our perspective. Since we have brought this motion of no confidence against the former mayor, Thapelo Ahmad, it's been very clear that his mayoralty has become a source of embarrassment, not just for the residents of Johannesburg who see the incoherence of a vision for a city with very complex challenges, but even among his own coalition partners. And the notion that this resignation has anything other than ducking a motion of no confidence that was surely going to succeed with the support of his own coalition partners tomorrow is purely laughable and an effort to spin the situation for what it is. And what it is, from our point of view, Thembekile, is the ANC and EFF forcing compromise candidates from parties that have no discernible constituency or vision to lead very complex local government municipalities.
Well, Panyaza Lesufi, as leader of this coalition, basically, and Gauteng ANC leader, says that they were going to be able to successfully defend the motion of no confidence tomorrow, and that is not what's happened here. In fact, I think he used the phrase that Ahmad is not running from the no confidence motion.
Well, he certainly is, and amusingly, the person to his left, Mr. Gayton McKenzie, had made it very publicly clear, along with engagements with our coalition partners, that they were going to support the motion of no confidence because his tenure had become an embarrassment. Organizations like Sanco, that are affiliated to the ANC, had issued public statements calling for his resignation. So I just suppose it can only serve to demonstrate the depth of dishonesty that emanate from Panyaza Lesufi, but I don't think this comes as a surprise to anyone. The measures they will go to try and tell the residents of Joburg that this was actually a successful arrangement, when I think this is probably the tenure of a mayor with the greatest embarrassment to the residents of Johannesburg.
When you say the greatest embarrassment to Johannesburg, Thapelo Ahmad said when he spoke, this has nothing to do with my ability to lead. Take us through the moments during his very short stint as mayor where it became clear to you that it would be a very short-lived stay.
Well, certainly, I think to be fair, Thembekile, our colleagues in Johannesburg have been much closer to the action in that regard. But, you know, we've seen a complete incoherence of a vision for Johannesburg. Every public appearance where Johannesburg residents are looking for a leader with vision and clarity and someone who gets the challenges they're facing, they have someone who's talking about 9 billion rand loans that he's negotiated, that the finance MMC knows nothing about, at a 2% interest rate, and it's just become laughable. I think the bottom line here, if we bring it down to the most important issue, is that Johannesburg residents face such complex and difficult challenges and have for some time. And the only way we can get those challenges dealt with is with clear and visionary leadership. And it was abundantly clear that leadership wasn't going to come from Thapelo Ahmad.
So now that he's gone, what will you do? Are you looking forward to a Gayton McKenzie term as mayor because he's already put his hand up?
Well, he's put his hand up and then he's put his hand down. It's difficult to follow the moves in that regard. But certainly, ActionSA remains committed to support the motions of no confidence that will be held tomorrow. We stand by those motions, and we will work with like-minded parties in that regard. I think the events of the last few days have been disappointing in as much as the Democratic Alliance, causing a bit of a fracturing of the coalition space. But certainly, we are urging the Democratic Alliance to come together with other parties to see if we can't find a candidate that we can put forward that ultimately could be elected into the city.
But the DA, it appears, even from what you've said, is the greatest stumbling block to your coalition success in Johannesburg, because even in this briefing it came out that basically, and this was a previous criticism when Mpopalazi from the DA was removed, that the Democratic Alliance wants things its way and is not as flexible, shall we say, on negotiation as it should be. So what now?
Without any question, and I think the best way of observing it is the DA has an ability to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory on a regular occasion. And it happened at the end of January when the PA was available to return to the coalition, and it happened again now in April. I think ultimately, though, we realize that a future coalition that is to fix South Africa requires the Democratic Alliance. And that means we need to work with coalition partners, we need to work with the DA, and we need to try and get everyone on the right path so that we can provide the credible alternative that the DA leader himself was outlining through the Moonshot Pact.
And were you aware of this bribe where Gayton McKenzie says he was invited, went to attend? I think it was Corne Mulder who he says was basically called in to facilitate a conversation between the Patriotic Alliance and the DA, where they basically socialized with the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, but he's suggesting that the higher-ups in the DA, or people who are pulling the strings, if you will, were not on board with what Steenhuisen was trying to achieve.
No, ActionSA wasn't part of that engagement, and I would be reticent to speculate on what may have happened. It doesn't surprise me that such engagements could take place, and it wouldn't be the first time that you have a scenario where a deal is agreed and leaders look eyeball to eyeball on the way forward, and then you have the federal executive doing an about turn. It's happened before, and if it's happened again, that wouldn't surprise us. And as part of an ongoing conversation we need to have with the DA to ensure there's alignment, because you can't have a leader announcing a moonshot pact, provide an alternative to the ANC and EFF. And here's an actual ANC and EFF government that they've allowed to continue governing the city of Johannesburg. Those are contradictory activities, and we need to make sure we remove those kind of contradictions going forward.
I wonder, though, Michael, if you as ActionSA feel stuck with the DA, because ever so often you criticize their posture in these coalition arrangements, in the conversations, even and around how positions will be split, etc. Yet and still, you continue to work with them when you seemingly have very clear differences in the manner in which you want these affairs to run.
Yeah, without any question. And I think ActionSA faces the quandary that the South African voter faces, and that is that the established political parties in South Africa don't offer very much. And we have to look at the options that are least bad around which we can coalesce. And there's no question in our point of view that in order to fix South Africa, the ANC has to be removed. And there's no question that mathematically that requires us to work with like-minded parties that include the Democratic Alliance. And that means that we need to endure some hardships along the way, but that ultimately a group of parties that are aligned to removing the ANC is what is going to be required to fix South Africa.
But how useful is that like-mindedness if it's only limited to a dislike, a distrust, a desire for the ANC to go, but you disagree on so much else? It's not working out very well, is it?
Well, actually, certainly it hasn't been working out well. Let's be clear on that. But I don't think that one should mischaracterize the idea that the first step that is required is to remove the ANC is somehow a kind of simplicity of focus. I think from there's a lot that the political parties can put down as commonalities in a policy point of view that can solve the challenges in South Africa, as well as a lot of diversity we can bring to the policy space that will address the blind spots of the political parties involved in that coalition. So there's a huge amount of potential to pull together a credible alternative to the ANC and EFF, but we've got to stop snatching defeat from the jaws of victory like this.
And when you all speak, the two coalitions, excuse me, you all have repeatedly said that you are basically working in the interest of the public to deliver basic services, to clean up these metros, such as Johannesburg, to sort out the financial problems. Yet we've been stuck, haven't we, for almost 2 years in a cycle of no longer have we memorized the name of a new mayor or a new speaker, they're on their way out. When does the coalition circus stop? Is it not time to just let whoever is currently in these positions stay there and allow the people in the metros to elect someone perhaps more outright in order to have a firm decision on who should be in charge?
I think most certainly that's a question that ActionSA is going to be deliberating upon. There comes a certain point of time where you don't want to continue to add to the instability and the chaos. But I do think it's very important to be clear, Thembekile, that there are parties that seek to remove people on grounds of principle, the likes of which I think we have been articulating here. And there are political parties that seek to buy votes in order to stage takeovers and put forward puppet mayors who they can control in the background and no doubt access the funding of the city. And I think those are two very different kinds of chaos that we need to discern between when we address that question.
So what next? How do we get there to a point where there is stability?
Well, I think the most immediate thing that we will try to do is to identify whether we can put forward a coalition partner from within the coalition for whom there may be the prospects of a majority in Johannesburg, But ultimately, I think we must be clear this comes down to an election. We need election results that produce more definitive outcomes, ones where you can't have single-seat parties that trade their votes and betray the voters who gave them those votes in the first place. I am greatly amused listening to Colleen Makubele talking about how the previous coalition had failed. She was part of that coalition. She was a central member of that coalition before she betrayed for her 30 pieces of silver to go to the ANC. So you can see the kind of ethical kind of principles at play there. And ultimately, we need to build a larger majority behind a group of parties that can produce that kind of stability. It's very clear that 2021 did not produce a large enough majority in these metros. And these political parties need to work harder to get more votes so that we get those stronger majorities.
Will you rest until Colleen Makubele is removed as Speaker?
No, our commitment to the residents of Johannesburg is ethical and effective governance. And the fact that the mayor has resigned allows us to look elsewhere in that regard. But there's no question that Colleen Makubele is not an ethical individual or an individual whose tenure in Johannesburg can continue to be supported. When she's absenting herself from council meetings for so-called medical reasons, and then we see her cropping up in the city of Tshwane where she's playing politics with the ANC to stage a takeover there. This is not a person who belongs in the seat of the Speaker of Johannesburg, and we will continue to bring motions as long as she's there.
Do you have candidates in mind for the role of Speaker and what is now a very vacant position of Mayor?
Well, certainly ActionSA has a number of candidates who we believe would have the skills and experience to do that kind of work. But I think it's very important that we do not find ourselves guilty of the thing we accuse the DA of doing, and that rather we engage in the coalition, we identify an answer from within the coalition rather than imposing one unilaterally.
Well, Michael Beaumont, I'll speak to you when the next mayor is elected or removed, whichever comes first. Thank you so much for speaking to us tonight.
Thank you, Thembekile.
That'll do it for this, what's been a breaking news evening here on Newzroom Afrika. Confirmation that the mayor of Johannesburg, Thapelo from Jama-ah, has now quit, but the ANC and its coalition partners insisting it has nothing to do with his alleged incompetence. Now,